I don't know much about Ramadan. So if you came to hear something about Ramadan, you're going to be severely disappointed, by me anyway. Perhaps our ordained clergy person will have something profound to say about it later. We'll see. Nevertheless, I have been thinking a lot about the ideas of freedom and submission. I would think that for those of us who identify with the principles of Unitarian Universalism, one of the values we hold most dear is freedom, particularly freedom of thought and belief. Just recently, I noticed that Jefferson's Statute of Religious Freedom for Virginia is here in our sanctuary. Surprise, surprise, hidden in plain sight. I suspect this statute is one of the things we like most about Jefferson. We know he was pretty psyched about it too because he wanted it on his tombstone, which it is. In fact, I think it would be kind of cool if the name of our religion could be changed to something that had mentioned the word freedom in it somehow. I'm afraid the name Unitarian Universalism is confusing to people because there's sort of the Unitarian part, which sounds like we're about one thing, and then the Universalism part, which sounds like we are about everything. And I think to non-UUs, we just sound kind of kooky, which is a shame. Perhaps our religion could simply be called the Free Church. And we could all practice freeism and be freists. People could say, look, there's a freist in a Prius. Although, after what Eric had to say last week, I guess instead of just being the free church, it should also be the free and responsible church. Now, the marketing folks would never go for that. So for those of you born into this freest way of thinking, you don't have the baggage of other religions, as do converts like me. But you likely feel the same way. We don't want to submit to creeds and dogmas and doctrines and teachings. Many converts are here because we wanted to get away from them, and the rest of you want to stay away from them. We don't like submitting to things, do we? We all want to be free, right? But what does it mean to be free? At a minimum, being free is not being enslaved or oppressed to the point where you must almost completely submit to others or be punished, imprisoned, or killed. The song we sang, Sick and Tired, was inspired by a quotation of Fannie Lou Hamer, the voting rights and civil rights activist who at the age of 44 tried to register to vote in Mississippi in 1962. She was shot at, jailed, and beaten. She went on to help found the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party and challenged the Democratic Party to seat its delegation at the 1964 convention. The song talks about getting up and breaking the chains of oppression. There is little redemptive value in submission to this sort of oppression, but many did submit simply to survive. Fortunately, others risked their lives and did not submit, which helped increase the freedom of others. Yet even while we value freedom so highly, can submission enrich our lives, even though we would be less free, less able to do whatever we want? Just by living in America, we submit ourselves to the Constitution, the laws of Congress, executive orders, judicial decisions, and fortunately we have the Bill of Rights intended to protect our freedoms. By living in Virginia, we submit to its Constitution and laws, and there are local ordinances we have to abide by also. We submit to these limitations because we, the people, have imposed these strictures on ourselves in this experiment in self-government. The idea is that through our governments, we limit what we are permitted to do. But overall, our freedoms are protected, and we live in a more secure and orderly place. Of course, there are laws we don't agree with. We can try to act to have them changed, work to change the elected officials, or we can move away, if we have the means, that is. Places without the rule of law or effective governments may have lots of freedom, but they end up being governed by the whims of tribal leaders or warlords or gangs, and people live in fear of punishment or death. Freedom like that, really anarchy, may not mean real freedom for people who aren't able to just live their lives in peace. In families, we submit to one another. We have to think about the needs of others and compromise, often putting their needs and wants ahead of ours. Bruce Springsteen sang a song about a person with a hungry heart who said, "I got a wife and kids in Baltimore, Jack. I went out for a ride and I never went back. father, I am free to walk out the door of my house and never come back. But every day I choose to submit myself to my family, which limits my freedom. Not that I always like it. But being a family has greatly enriched my life. We laugh, sing, learn, pray, talk, read, watch TV. My daughter made me watch Winnie the Pooh last night, which I still like. And we just enjoy each other's company. There have been many difficult times, to be sure, but somehow we've made it through together. Hopefully, our children frequently submit to our loving authority as parents. In their submission, though, is a measure of freedom. If they normally do as we ask, treat others with respect, and have good manners, we will be more likely to take them fun places like the zoo or movies or concerts. And we will be more likely to allow them to have the freedom to go places with others, trusting and praying that they will make good choices. As we'll sing at the song at offertory, we are all links in a chain, connected to each other and our families through generations. A chain that is connected to our friends and neighbors, and ultimately to all human beings. In this church, we submit to one another, helping to meet each other's needs, accepting each other, encouraging each other's spiritual growth, bringing meals to one another, being a listening ear and a caring heart. The church helps provide roots to hold us close, as well as wings to set us free, so we may more fully experience the spirit of life. Perhaps when we submit to others, have connections, and are rooted, we are better able to fly. That is, better able to be our best selves. What binds us together are not only these personal connections, but also the fact that we believe in these 7 principles of freeism and agree to submit ourselves to these principles. Eric reminded me that the word religion itself comes from the Latin word religare, meaning to bind together, which reminded me that the Latin word for believe, credere, is derived from the Latin word for heart, core. So, etymologically speaking, in religion we are bound together by what we hold deep inside in our hearts. No doubt we may act contrary to these principles just because we are human, created perfectly imperfect, as Eric likes to say. But our submission to these principles does have implications, even if we don't always measure up. As a trustee of the church's Abraham's Endowment Fund for Music, I've started to attend the Endowment Committee meetings. The committee is working on an investment policy and thinking about how that policy should reflect our values. There's a concept called socially responsible investing that can help us avoid investing in companies that don't reflect our values. Perhaps ones that discriminate based on sexual orientation, or ones that have demonstrated patterns of violating human rights or workers' rights. If this approach is taken, we would limit our freedom to invest in whatever we want. But these limits may serve a greater purpose, helping to, in a small way, create more freedom for others. And since many of us have IRAs and 401ks, this concept may be one we could think about even as individuals, if we haven't already. So, where do you see freedom and submission in your life? What chains do you need to break? What might be holding you back from being the best you can be in your free and responsible search for truth and meaning? What links that connected you to others have you broken? Or have others broken with you? And do they need to be mended? What could you submit to that might limit your freedom, but might enrich your life and the lives of others? For those of you who ascribe to the values of this religion, enjoy who is here and what happens here, maybe it's time to bind yourself more closely with this church by becoming a member, if you aren't already. Just saying. May we all find a balance between freedom and submission that works for each one of us in each phase of our lives.